Hello, I'm Brigantia, Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. Happy Wednesday, and welcome back to our series Journey Through the Tarot. This week we are looking at Temperance. We are, as we have been, looking at the Housewives Tarot by Paul Keppel and Jude Buffum. So let us begin and see what we can learn about the Temperance card. So first impressions. As you can see, we've got a nice, cute, retro stand mixer, which, if you can get your hands on one, those are actually really quite useful even in this day and age. But moving on, as you can see, it's already got something in there and it's whirling away, and it's also surrounded by ingredients labeled joy and sorrow, justice and anger. I really like this metaphor because in cooking and baking, getting the proportions of ingredients correct is absolutely essential, but particularly in baking. Baking does tend to be more of a science, cooking is a little bit more of an art, but the principle does generally apply. You have too much or too little of anything, and it can spoil the entire end result, and you do not want that. And our lives are the same. Even our day-to-day lives are the same. And keeping things in balance is a constant task that we're always having to work on. We're always having to adapt and make allowances as the situation develops and changes, or when unexpected things occur. So it's not something that we find a balance point and everything is proportionate and appropriate and we can just sit there in a static fashion. No, we're always moving back and forth on that seesaw. And that really is the message of what temperance is about. Things are in motion, but things have to be kept in check. Now the key words for this card, after we consult our handy-dandy booklet, are cooperation, compromise, and sympathy. Temperance does have an air of cooperation about it. To be temperate is to be able to coexist with other people, and of course, if through one thing or another, there will be times in life when we do need to cooperate or when we need to compromise, sometimes even when we need to give in and let the other person give their way. It's also about sympathy, and sympathy being akin to empathy, of trying to see things from the other person's perspective. Sometimes that in of itself can help us moderate our own emotional reactions and the literal actions that we take thereafter. Now, what it also says is add equal parts joy and sorrow, anger and forgiveness, justice and compassion. Mix on high for 2 minutes or until well blended. Temperance is a delicious and healthy combination of opposite sides of the spectrum. A heaping helping of compromise or cooperation in marriage, relationships, or partnerships. Spoon this mixture into every aspect of your life. And certainly, if we sit down and think about it for longer than 5 minutes, we could probably all identify areas in our lives in which we could do with a pretty hefty dose of temperance. Now, when this comes up in a reading, first and foremost, I would initially suspect this is coming through as advice, especially if the querent's life is spinning out of control in some way, and oftentimes when people are wanting a tarot reading, it's because something is out of control or feels like it is. But there's something in their life that is causing problems and it's getting a bit much to handle. So when you see temperance in this context, it is essentially calling that person to order, examining their mode of life, their priorities, and essentially to encourage them to make appropriate adjustments. I mean, a lot of us, we know what we need to do, but we don't really feel like doing it. But sometimes if we hear it from someone else, particularly if that's someone who's telling us in a kind and compassionate way, we are more likely to say, I give in. I do need to do the thing. So that could be one way this would apply in a reading. Another is as counsel moving forward. If the querent is entering a new chapter in their lives, or it's gone through a huge major change of some kind, temperance is a sign to not go to extremes as they adapt to their new circumstances. Just walk calmly along rather than diving in and creating the messes. Assess what's appropriate for the occasion and act accordingly. And the third way this could appear in a reading, most often, is what have we learned from this kind of card? Sometimes temperance will appear in readings as a form of nagging. Especially if you can see this by looking at the other cards surrounding it in a spread. It might pop up and you'll just have the sense in your mind of, this is what you ought to have done, and it would have prevented the mess you're currently in. But you didn't, so you're going to have to clean up your mess. But after that, maybe you need to do this a little bit more. Maybe you need to develop temperance and patience and restraint. I know restraint is not a very popular word these days, but it applies, and it's amazing how often in life that is actually a better way to go. So, that is what we can take away from Temperance. Next week we will have another segment of this series, and we will be looking at the devil. So I hope you will come back from that. If you haven't already, please join us at Blackbird's Brew on Discord. There will be a link in the description box below to join. And also, if you haven't already, please subscribe, like this video, and leave me a little comment if the spirit should so move you. That's it for now. I'll see you in another video. Bye.